99% of guys heading out for their first turkey hunt grab a pump 12 gauge because that is what they were taught, and it is costing them birds. When a tom sneaks in close, a traditional turkey choke gives you a pattern the size of a golf ball. You miss the easiest shot of the season. The other 1% realize the rules have changed. They know tungsten supershot rewrote the ballistics manual. They run an over and under to lock in a tight choke for distance and an open choke for a sudden ambush. Most of what sits on the rack is wrong for the modern spring woods. These are the 5 platforms worth your money. Kicking off the list at number 5 is the Stevens 555. Look, this is a working man's rig that skips the tactical paint jobs for traditional Turkish walnut and a matte black receiver. You are looking at roughly $700 to bring this one home, and for that price, you get a phenomenally light platform. Available in everything from 12 gauge down to 410 bore, it features 26 or 28-inch chrome-lined carbon steel barrels and a single selective mechanical trigger. Carrying this shotgun through steep terrain feels like carrying nothing at all. The balance point rests perfectly between your hands. When you bring it up to the shoulder, it points with the effortless speed of a much smaller weapon. The trigger pull breaks clean and sharp, like a dry branch snapping under a heavy boot. Under the hood, Stevens pulled off a massive weight reduction without sacrificing safety. The receiver is machined from lightweight aluminum alloy, but the engineers embedded a solid steel insert directly into the breech face. That means you get steel-on-steel lockup exactly where the chamber pressure is highest when a 3-inch Magnum detonates. This design bypasses the massive bulk of a solid steel box lock, giving you the ultimate strength where it counts, while keeping the overall weight hovering near 6 pounds. Here is where it falls apart for me if you do not plan ahead. Physics is undefeated. Stripping the weight down to barely 6 pounds in a 12 gauge means that firing a 3-inch Magnum turkey load will absolutely punish your shoulder. That kind of violent recoil induces flinching, and flinching causes missed birds when it counts. If you want this platform to truly shine in the woods, drop down to the 20 gauge or 410 bore and feed it tungsten supershot. Sliding into the next spot is the ATI Cavalry Turkey Fowl. When you want a platform that blends aerospace engineering with the rugged demands of the spring woods, this is where you start. American tactical imports completely flip the script on what a budget-friendly over and under should look like. Sets you back roughly $600 to $700, and what you get for that money is an incredibly thought-out piece of machinery. The entire system feeds on 12 gauge, 20 gauge, or 410 bore, and it comes wrapped in the iconic mossy oak bottomland camouflage pattern that absolutely disappears against a hardwood backdrop. It features compact 21 or 22-inch barrels crafted from 4140 chrome moly steel. Pulling the weapon into your shoulder, it balances with a distinct rearward bias that makes the muzzle feel nearly weightless. The trigger cracks like thin ice underfoot, surprising you with how clean a factory setup can feel without expensive modifications. When you send a heavy payload downrange, the recoil is a quick punch to the shoulder rather than a rolling wave, keeping you relatively flat for a rapid follow-up shot if the situation demands it. Under the hood, the engineering focuses entirely on practical modern application. It uses a receiver carved from 7075 aerospace-grade aluminum. Why does that matter to the shooter? Because ATI Factory drilled and tapped that exact aluminum frame for a Weaver 417T optics base right out of the box. Unlike traditional double guns, where mounting a red dot requires custom machining and a trip to an expensive gunsmith, this one lets you bolt your electronic optic directly to the receiver. That guarantees a rock-solid zero that will not shift when you are dragging the gun through dense briars or tossing it into the back of a truck. Here is where it falls apart for me. The physics of this design create a serious liability if you buy the 12-gauge version. Stripping the receiver weight down with aluminum means this gun absorbs almost zero recoil, transferring all that violent energy straight into your shoulder when firing 3-inch magnums. That kind of punishment forces the shooter to anticipate the recoil, which induces flinching, and flinching causes missed birds in the field. Stepping up the game at number 3 is the Mossberg International Silver Reserve Eventide Turkey. This is where the industry finally woke up and realized that you do not need a massive 12-gauge to get the job done. Sling's 20-gauge, 28-gauge, and 410 bore downrange with absolutely devastating terminal performance when paired with modern tungsten ammunition. The damage to your wallet is approximately $750 at the local counter. Mossberg dressed this completely in synthetic furniture, covered in mossy oak green leaf, ditching the polished wood for materials that shrug off freezing rain and thick spring mud without a second thought. Handling the Eventide in a cramped ground blind is an absolute revelation because of the ultra-short 20-inch barrels. The trigger gives way like a heavy glass rod, offering a crisp release with very little over-travel. When you take the shot, the recoil on the sub-gauge models is nothing more than a polite tap on the shoulder. That means you can stay completely locked onto the target and verify the hit without the barrel climbing violently out of your field of view. Looking at the internal action, the standout engineering choice here is the use of manual extractors instead of automatic ejectors. When you break the action open, the gun does not violently throw the spent hulls over your shoulder. Instead, the mechanism simply lifts the empty shells a quarter-inch out of the chamber. This matters immensely in the woods because it allows you to silently pluck the hulls out by hand. There is no loud metallic ping, and there is no sudden movement of flying plastic to spook a second bird standing just out of range. I know the heavy caliber fanboys will hate this sub-gauge ranking. Drop your take in the comments. Honestly, I have no real complaints about how this platform performs in the timber, but if you are obsessed with running electronic sights, this one will frustrate you at the workbench. It lacks a factory-drilled rail, meaning you are forced to spend extra cash on aftermarket rib mounts if you want to run a red dot. This is where most channels stop. We keep going with the CZ Reaper Magnum sitting proudly at number 2. Built over in Turkey and imported by CZ USA, this is an absolute juggernaut designed specifically to endure the most punishing turkey loads ever manufactured. It runs exclusively on 12-gauge power, boasting massive 3.5-inch chambers that give you enough volume to pack an insane amount of tungsten or lead. Street price is hovering right around $1,000, which buys you an over-engineered heavy-duty frame. Instead of fragile wood, they wrap the entire stock and forend in heavy polymer, finished with Realtree camouflage, creating a tool that simply laughs at rain, mud, and absolute abuse in the woods. When you settle the gun into your shoulder, the physical mass of the weapon gives you a deeply reassuring sense of rugged stability. The mechanical trigger breaks like snapping a thick piece of dry timber, offering a slightly heavy but incredibly predictable release every single time. Touching off a heavy Magnum payload shoves like an angry mule, but the 7-pound physical weight of the gun soaks up the worst of the violent energy before it shatters your collarbone. Peeling back the design choices, CZ solved one of the biggest headaches in the double-barrel world with their optics setup. They engineered a removable Picatinny rail that clamps directly onto the top ventilated rib, positioning it exactly over the monoblock. Why does this matter to the modern hunter? Because it places your red dot sight as physically close to the bore axis as mechanically possible. Instead of lifting your cheek off the comb and ruining your shooting posture to see the dot, you lock into a perfect, tight cheek weld, completely eliminating parallax errors and sloppy mechanics. My only gripe is the sheer weight of the platform when you have to cover a lot of ground. Tipping the scales at a full 7 pounds empty, it becomes a dragging anchor if you are hiking steep ridges all morning, making it a much better option for a stationary blind rather than an aggressive run-and-gun hunt. This bruiser absolutely earns its elite ranking, but wait until you see the untouchable masterpiece sitting at number 1. Taking the undisputed crown at number 1 is the Browning Cynergy Ultimate Turkey. When you demand the absolute pinnacle of purpose-built, dual-barrel supremacy, nothing else in the industry even comes close to this masterpiece. You are looking at well over $2,300 to bring this flagship home, placing it firmly in the premium tier of modern hunting arms. Browning offers this platform chambered in 12-gauge, 20-gauge, and 28-gauge. They wrap the entire composite stock in either mossy oak bottomland or break-up country camouflage, and then they lock it down with their proprietary DuraTouch armor coating. This means you get a weather-impervious shield that provides an incredibly secure grip, even when your hands are covered in freezing spring rain. Bringing the Cynergy up to your shoulder feels like a natural extension of your own body. The trigger shears away like a high-tension wire snapping under pressure, delivering a ridiculously sharp 6-pound pull with virtually zero lock time. When you send a massive 3.5-inch shell downrange, the recoil is a deep, heavy push rather than a violent strike, largely thanks to the specialized Inflex recoil pad that physically directs the comb down and away from your cheekbone. The Browning name is not just nostalgia in the turkey woods. It is a cultural reputation forged by generations of hunters who hand these shotguns down to their kids because the engineering simply refuses to fail. Looking deep inside the action, the true genius of this platform lies in the exclusive monolock hinge system. Instead of the barrels pivoting on traditional trunnion pins like a standard over and under, the Cynergy utilizes quarter-circle cutouts machined directly into the action block that mate flawlessly with the monoblock. Why does this matter when a tom is closing the distance? Because this architecture creates an ultra-low-profile receiver. It places the axis of the bore significantly lower in your hands and perfectly in line with your shoulder, which completely neutralizes muzzle flip and allows you to stay locked onto the target through the shot. Furthermore, it utilizes a mechanical reverse striker system, so if you ever encounter a dead primer on your first barrel, you can instantly fire the second without needing recoil inertia to reset the sear. This weapon earns the top spot because it gives you the rugged, weatherproof reliability of number 2, but with a refined, match-grade trigger system that makes the action on number 4 feel rough. And it does it with an ultra-low profile that makes number 3 look incredibly bulky. Look, I have no real complaints here mechanically, as it is flawless out of the box. But if you are on a tight budget or just hunt one weekend a year, this one will sting at the register. It is built exclusively for people who buy once, buy right, and demand absolute perfection. That is the lineup. 5 over and under platforms that will completely change how you dominate the spring woods. The days of hauling a massive pump action through the thick brush and praying for a decent pattern at close range are over. It all comes down to trusting your gear. When that tom steps inside 30 yards, the woods go dead silent and the adrenaline hits. You make the call on what sits in your safe. If you want the raw truth without the fluff, lock it in right here.